Hey everybody, I'm Jesse, producer of the No Quitting the Home Team podcast. I wanted to give a quick disclaimer in that while we hope anyone who listens would gain wisdom and insight from Dave and Renee's conversations, this is still a podcast intended for married couples, and to that end, there will occasionally be dialogue around sexual intimacy and other related topics. So, for those of you who may be single and particularly sensitive to this subject matter, or those who may be listening at home or in the car with their kids around, we wanted to give you a heads up in advance so that you might continue listening at your own discretion.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to No Quitting the Home Team, a summer podcast on marriage. I'm Dave, and I'm here with my wife, Renee.
Hello.
And we're excited about this episode today.
Episode 2.
Episode 2. We're going to begin every episode with answering the basic question, how are we doing? And so, Renee, let's get right into it. How are we doing? How are you doing? How's the state of our marriage right now?
Are we going to start with our rating scale?
Is there a rating scale?
Remember last week we were about a 7.5?
Okay.
1 to
yeah.
10?
Yeah.
I would
Well,
say...
maybe tell me how you're doing and then give the rating at the end.
Okay. I would say we're good. We have a busy upcoming month from a planning standpoint. Our oldest leaves for 5 weeks to be counselor at a summer camp on Saturday. We have a family reunion. I'm already getting emails from the school about AP classes and planning for...
It's funny, I don't get those emails.
I know. So I do feel for me, there's a little, like the anxiety is rising a bit just with the planning component of keeping our life moving forward.
Yeah.
But I do love summer. I think summer we have your schedule is less hectic in the summer, less nights. So I think we have a good rhythm as far as just time together. And yeah, I'd say 7.
7.
Because we're not fresh off vacation like we were last week.
We've gone down 0.5.
We've had a week of real life.
We have.
Meal planning, all the things.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think I'm feeling good. I would give it around a 7, if not maybe a little bit better. Although I do have an issue.
With me?
Well, with our marriage right now.
Oh dear.
And
Here comes the free therapy.
okay, so honestly, I am frustrated right now because we cannot get any alone time. Our boys, I feel like, are conspiring against us, and we cannot be in our bedroom alone without a legitimate fear of one of our children barging into our room. And that's really interfering with happy fun time. And I am not okay with that.
A little background. Before the pandemic, because Dave works on Sunday, would have Fridays off. And he's used to a designated day of just a date day where there are no children in the house from...
Is that code for scheduled sex?
I didn't say that. And has complained incessantly throughout the pandemic that we lost our special Fridays.
Yes. Yes, that is true. And if we're going to be honest with you at home, that is the case.
I mean, we were starting with overshare. We have to rate this
for years.
It's a rated podcast, PG-13.
We've had Fridays, our TGIF, and the boys were always at school, and so we can actually have alone time in our own house. And it was happy fun Fridays, and we haven't had that since the pandemic.
Yeah.
So,
and particularly worse in the summer when. Well, what you don't know if you have young kids is that when your kids get older, you cannot outstay them up. They stay up really late. And we live in a lovely historic neighborhood in Denver that we thoroughly enjoy, but we have a very small, tiny little house with our kids' bedroom 4 feet from ours
Right.
with no door, and that's a different story, but their bedroom doesn't have a door. Ours does, but theirs doesn't.
Right. So anyway, it's been hard having moments alone where we actually feel
Yep.
alone.
Yep. it's
And
true.
like to have like normal
Yep.
husband-wife intimacy that just
And conversation.
convert
And other things too.
intimacy. That's what I meant by intimacy.
Okay. So what's our there is a week coming where all three of our kids will be
At camp.
at camp at the same time. So see, there's hope on the horizon.
I know. It's 4 weeks from now,
Right.
but I am really looking forward to that week.
Yeah.
Stay tuned. All right. So do you want to introduce the next?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we talked
Oh,
about
gosh.
last
I'll
week.
have to get my mind ready.
Yeah, you better brace yourself.
Okay.
We talked about last week that to kind of keep things fun and interesting, we're going to alternate a surprise question for the other one that can range in topics from silly to funny to serious to heavy. And Dave started us off with sort of a bizarre question, in my opinion.
I thought it was a penetrating,
Okay.
important question
Last
for
week.
people to know you.
So this week it's my turn. And
All right, here we go. I
this-
am legitimately nervous.
this is something I have wanted clarity on probably our whole marriage.
Oh gosh.
And a little caveat is the question may come across as sexist. And and I don't mean it to be. It's just that this is based on my experience,
Okay.
anecdotally, and almost every other friend I have who's married would say the same thing.
Okay. All right.
So much so, here's another little background. We have some good friends that live in North Carolina, and love you, John and Alicia. They have even coined a term for it that we have adopted, okay?
Okay.
And John, her husband, is one of the smartest guys we know. We met them in England. He got his bachelor's at the University of Virginia. He got his PhD in Cambridge. He's a phenomenal person, competent. He has a really high bandwidth. He provides leadership to the Anglican Churches of America network. And yet, even John Yates surprise under this spell
Okay.
of
okay. So what's
what they
surprise?
call dad eyes.
Yes.
No, sorry, man eyes. There is a reality in my life, and it's not just you. I have 4 of you in the house.
By you,
Four
you mean
men,
males?
yes.
Okay.
And this happens on such a regular basis, where I say, "Hey, Dave. Hey, Will. Hey, Ian. Hey, Beckett. Run to the spice drawer and grab the paprika." To which they come back, "Oh, sorry, we don't have any paprika."
First of all, to which we come back and go, "What's paprika?"
right.
And then,
I say, "This is what paprika is. This is where it is." And they respond with, "We don't have any." And I in my mind, I know we have paprika. So it's an interchange culminating in me going to the spice drawer and picking up the paprika that is on the very front row. This happens not just with cooking related items, with anything. I mean, it can be, go get your shoes on. I don't know where my shoes are. They're in your drawer, or they're on the shoe rack, or they're downstairs. No, they're not. They're not there. And then I go and they're exactly where I said they were, in plain sight. Okay, so does this reality not happen?
Okay.
Does this reality not happen
it does. It does.
daily?
Okay. So I'm waiting for the question though.
So the question is, I need clarity on the etiology of this.
Like, why do I have man eyes?
Why is this? Why you specifically, and generally, why is this a thing? Because it honestly causes a lot of tension and and conflict in marriages I know. Because in my mind, I'm like, this is either, and I'm just saying what I'm thinking.
That's fine.
Okay?
Say it.
No accusations. This is either just laziness, uncaring, or a neurological deficit. Like what else could explain this phenomena that happens ubiquitously in marriages across the country and specifically in our house every single day?
Okay.
Okay, so that's the question. Is that fair? Maybe
Is
not
that
fair.
It's certainly clear. And I think
Explain. The question is, explain to me the phrase coined by the Yeatses, man eyes.
Yep. Well, it is a thing. I definitely think it's a thing. And the reason why, it might be a combination of all those things. It could be, like, for example,
you, like, personalize it.
for me personally. Well, it's definitely not that I don't care, because I care deeply.
Okay.
Because it can't be
But
that.
you could care deeply, but not actually care about finding the paprika.
Right.
Like care
Here-
generally,
well,
but not care
Here-
situationally.
okay, this is how I experience it.
Okay.
Whenever I am looking for an item that you've told me to look for, first of all, it's kind of like whenever we're going through the drive-through and everyone in my family's yelling at me what they want to order. And I'm having to order, and then they're also going, oh, it's the number 2, and don't get the Sprite this time. I want the high C or whatever. It's like input overload. So I'm having to like process all this information and then be able to kind of spit out what the person in the drive-through needs to hear from me. No,
a single request isn't input. That's one request.
I'm giving you some insight.
Okay, sorry.
So whenever I get an instruction, hey, you need to find whatever. Here's this thing I need. It's downstairs. Whenever I go downstairs and I go into the room or I open up the spice drawer, what I see is similar to that input of everyone yelling at me all these different things. In other words, it's a million different, it could be at a million different places, a million different things all at once. And so I can be experienced kind of like a mind scramble. And it, because I don't have singularity of focus. I'm looking at a million different things. So I've given myself permission. The spice is a great example. Just to go, okay, it's in here. I trust Renee. I really do believe it's here. I'm going to give myself permission just to look at it individually. And even if that takes 10 minutes, that's okay. And sometimes it is literally the very last thing that I see, and it's the paprika, for example. But sometimes it's not. And then sometimes it just turns out that I somehow missed it. But I'm trying to be methodical, but I have to slow down in order to see right. But if I just go downstairs and I'm looking for one thing, but my environment, it can be,
Information
in my mind,
overload.
it can be in a million different places in that one environment. It's overload. So that's how I experience man eyes.
Okay. Is there an element, and maybe I experience this more with the boys, but is there an element of just being lazy and it takes too much effort to look for it and it's easier just to say, it's not there, come find it?
Yes.
Is that present with you? Is there ever that with you? Honestly.
Honestly, I think in my mind, there have been enough instances where I've been told to look for something and it wasn't there. I feel like I've been given just enough. I've been on just enough wild goose chases looking for something that wasn't there that in my mind, and I'm not saying this is right, but in my mind, I have like permission to give up at some point to say, oh, well, maybe it's not. Maybe it's like that one time when she had me look for that thing and it wasn't there.
So what would you say in our situation is the percentage of times that I send you on a wild goose chase versus the percentage of times you go to find something that's right in front of you and you don't find it?
Well, it's
Because you just sold it as if that happens almost in equal amount as
No.
well, that's kind of
No, but that's how trauma works. It's just like one really big thing, and then it sort of colors all the rest of my experience.
but
It's
what
just-
would you say the percentage of when things you have difficulty finding, you and the boys have difficulty finding, versus the times I send you somewhere and it's actually not there?
Maybe, I mean, it's in the single digits
Okay.
of percentages. So like 90 out of 100 times, it is exactly how you described it.
Mm-hmm.
There is that a rare 1 in 10 times when it's not. And when you're in the middle of searching,
Right.
that one time comes to mind.
Produces a trauma response. Okay.
Yeah. So it's like that. So it's your fault.
Oh, wait. Let's try that. Let's try that again. So,
No.
all right. No, that's helpful.
Yeah.
I feel like that's and well, let me come back to, do you think there's actually a brain development piece of it? Not being funny, but just like legitimately. Do you think there's a neurological component to visual spatial capability of women versus men? Do you? We are unqualified to be commenting on
well,
this, but
there are patterns of thinking that generally map onto gender difference. Now, every brain is different.
Right,
Every
right,
way
totally.
people think is different.
and I didn't want
unique.
to insinuate that every man does this, but
Right.
it does. It is present in our
In our
reality.
reality,
and
it's
in a
true.
lot of marriages I know.
Yes.
That's
yeah.
present in the reality too.
So there's all kinds of research on neurological difference in development between men and women that's in the marriage therapy realm.
Right.
There's tons of stuff. And generally speaking, yes, there are differences. There's differences in the way that the hemispheres of the brain communicate to one another. A well-recognized sort of reality is that the corpus callosum, which is kind of the bridge between the left and right hemisphere, the corpus callosum in women generally functions much more efficiently than the corpus callosum in men. Meaning that when the left and right hemisphere, when they have to communicate to each other, especially when it's a stressful situation, women generally have the capacity to have full access to their brain. Whereas with men, with their not as functional, and some say even smaller corpus callosum, their brain function, that bridge between the left and right hemispheres, it's like a traffic jam, which is why men often have the deer in the headlights look when they feel like, oh, I'm in trouble, or I'm supposed to do something that I haven't done yet. They often freeze in that moment, and while their wife, generally they're like a beautiful mind. They can remember everything in perfect clarity in that moment. But there are some biological sort of indicators about how the corpus callosum functions.
That's helpful.
Yeah.
All right.
That was fun.
Shifting to our next segment. This is the segment I briefly introduced last week that mines Dave's repository of experience and training for kind of like boots on the ground nuggets that can help people where they are today, little things they can apply relationally. So what do you have for us today?
Well, today on No But Seriously, I have one component about marriage, which goes like this. Often people think of successful marriages as two people who, over the course of many years, they actually become similar. In other words, they kind of, they kind of begin
Start to look alike.
Some do. They do get older, so they kind of shrink at similar rates. But that they become similar in how they think, how they react to things, they become more and more the same. When now, and that may happen, and sometimes when that happens, it's okay. But what I have observed and what is true certainly biblically in terms of a biblical vision of marriage is actually something very different. When two become one, scripturally speaking, that oneness is not the same as sameness. So whenever whenever it's described that Adam and Eve became one, it doesn't mean that they became aligned in their gifting, became aligned in their personality. Rather, marriages that thrive, how they experience oneness isn't that they actually become any less of themselves. Oftentimes people think of sacrifice in marriage or unselfishness in marriage as meaning I have to give up some of me in order to be a good kind of godly husband to my wife. That's actually not the case. Rather, what oneness means, and even what unselfishness means, isn't sacrificing self classically, isn't becoming any less of who you are. It's rather a reorientation of who you are so that who you are doesn't just benefit yourself anymore, but it actually benefits your spouse. So it's actually a reshaping of yourself so that who you are isn't just beneficial for you, but that actually causes the flourishing and thriving of your spouse.
Give us some examples of that.
So
practically.
here's a great example. And Renee and I we're kind of stumbling forward in this reality as well. And something that immediately comes to mind is something you said to me. It was probably 4 or 5 years ago, where I came home after work and you asked how the day went, and I'd mentioned, hey, I spent time with so and so, and I prayed for so and so, and that time of prayer together was really special. And you made this comment. You said, "I wish you would pray for me like that." And in that moment, it's sort of, there's a bit of a revelation, and that is that there is actually, I don't know why we got to that point, but there was a part of me that held back the reality that I'm a pastor, and I pray for people, and I pastor or shepherd people, and that's actually a part of who I am. It's not just what I do, but it's a part of my gifting, calling. It is who I am. And yet, whenever I was home, I think I wanted to hold back part of that. And part of it was, boundaries. And I don't want to just bring, work stuff at home all the time. But my work is praying, part of my work is praying for people. And so when you said, I wish you would pray for me like that, what you did was actually give me permission to not feel like I have to actually sacrifice that part of who I am, but to reorient that part of who I am in a way that can benefit you and the boys. And that gave me a green light to be a pastor at home without feeling like it was bringing work into the home, but it just allowed me to be fully present in a way that I'm good at. That's a part, I'm good at that. So it allowed me to be, to express who I am for your benefit and in something that I'm good at. Mm-hmm. And I felt we experienced a bump in our relationship and with the boys too, that I could be a pastor to them and that it didn't feel weird anymore. It just felt like I was fully present.
Mm-hmm. That's good. How would you apply that then to, I think a lot of conflict in marriage stems from delineation of responsibilities, particularly when you have kids, but just in the relationship. How does that apply when things just have to get done or things have to happen that really aren't in either person's gifting? Like, I can see how that would enhance a relationship when you use your not you retain your uniqueness and you retain your gifts and strengths to serve the other person and probably serve your family. But what about that gray area where neither of you would categorize that into either of your strengths, but it's something that has to be a part of your relationship? Because I do feel like that's where a lot of conflict lies.
Right. I mean, with that, there's like real negotiation and honest dialogue. And do I feel like I'm being taken advantage of if I'm always the one who has to do the laundry, if I'm always the one who has to clean the dishes after dinner? And I think that gray space that isn't, it's not like it doing that actually fulfills the deepest part of,
right.
of our gifting or calling, or it's my
because it sounds very idealistic.
Totally.
What you're saying, which is great, and I think it did benefit us.
Yes,
it did benefit us to have that freedom, but I think there's reality that isn't encompassed by either of your gifts. That's a big part of managing a life.
Well, I think part of it is being open to creative solutions. For example, I think you and I were constantly thinking about that gray space and how do we make that gray space more sustainable to us. Something that we've done the past couple of years that's been a game changer has been after dinner, we all clean up the kitchen, all of us. And there's no going on to whatever else that we want to do until the kitchen is totally cleaned. And so that way it's not just on you, it's not just on me or on one kid. We're all doing it together. And that's classic gray space. And do you want to tell the people about, I think another gray space that we found a solution to, it's been life. I am actually really intimidated and sobered by how significant this solution has been in our life. But do you want to tell the people about Aurora? Aurora.
Yes. Probably my favorite person on the planet is a beautiful soul who comes and cleans our house every 2 weeks. And it really was. We resisted for years because money's tight, and we can figure out. We have a little house. I can clean the house, but I think in a particularly busy season, a few years ago, I don't even know, 5 years ago, 6 years ago.
The years blur.
We decided to pay someone to come in and help us with cleaning twice a month, and it really was a literal game changer because all of those tasks that were constantly on me. Like, there was always in the back of my mind, I need to vacuum here, I need to scrub the toilet, it was a constant stream of to-dos that was unrelenting. It just took that away. And it really was it was something we resisted for a long, long, long time because we couldn't afford it and it seemed extravagant. But I've told Dave, I probably tell him this monthly, I would stop eating for a week before we had to give up Aurora.
Yeah, no, she loves Aurora more than most family members, and maybe more than me oftentimes.
Just depends on the day.
Yeah, but that's an example.
That was
creatively, and that isn't even not that creative when we talk about it, but it was creative in the moment, meaning we had to step outside of what it is that we were accustomed to.
Yep.
That was right in that gray space.
Yep, it's good. Good words, honey.
Thanks. All right, great. Transition.
All right, now we're going to talk about, I think this is my favorite section, what's weird about us, because I think, like I said last week, I think we're paralyzed by a pursuit of relational perfection and trying to be this or be that, or we need to look like this. And so I think as much as we can celebrate our weirdness and our uniqueness, maybe we should say uniqueness.
No, I know what's coming. This is weird.
Is this weird? Okay.
But it's not weird in the way that you think it's going to be weird.
So
I think
what's weird about us today starts with what's weird about Dave. No, it starts with what's weird about us, and then it progresses to what's weird about Dave.
okay.
Is that okay? Is this fair
Yeah,
game?
yeah, no, go for it.
Okay. In our family, we weirdly brush our teeth in the shower because we all 5 share a bathroom. And have you ever seen the remnants of a boy brushing their teeth? Have you seen what it does to the walls, the ceiling, every inch of the bathroom has toothpaste splatter. So we sort of it's just more contained in the shower. And even the spit guts in the sink, like that was just a constant. So we transitioned to brushing our teeth in the shower, which I think in so many ways has been.
Well, it helps with showering.
Yeah. What do you mean helps with showering?
Does it not, in some ways, encourage showering?
It does. Yeah. Yes. It helps ensure consistency in showering.
Yes.
So that's the background. That's kind of weird about us, but it's been fantastic. So occasionally I'll get in the shower and I'll forget to bring my toothbrush in there. And Dave usually showers early in the morning because he's off to work. And it really is a no-brainer solution for me, just instead of like getting out of the shower, sopping wet, is to just use Dave's toothbrush because it's in the shower. And
this is going to come back on you, honey.
I know. It's so weird to me. So it took him a bit to discover it because he's not as observant early in the morning. But one morning he said, did someone use my toothbrush? And I was like, yeah, I did.
This was early on in our marriage. Like, this was,
This has been a while.
Yeah, it's been a while. Maybe like 10 years ago or something.
And I was like, yeah, I didn't want to get out. I forgot mine. And he was visibly disgusted by the fact that I was using a toothbrush. And we all know the fringe benefits of marriage. And I'm like, this is going to gross you out? Like, in the spectrum of things that occur in this household, like, you're going to be grossed out that I just couldn't. I think it's so weird that Dave gets grossed out when I use his toothbrush in the shower. I think that's weird.
And I think it's weird.
That I use
No, I think it's weird that you think it's weird that it's gross for me. Because I feel like, hygiene, I'm probably middle of the road with hygiene. I'm not like
that. Even more why it's so weird to me.
I know, but this is an area where I shine.
You're not finicky about anything, really. In this, you're just so appalled by this practice.
I know. Well, it's gross. Is
Honey,
it not gross to you?
It's not gross. You kiss me. Like there's like, it's not gross. I mean, it's not more gross than other things.
But is it? I feel like when I put a toothbrush into my mouth and the toothbrush is already wet, and I'm like wanting to get clean and it's already wet.
That just means I washed it, I rinsed it off really well under the shower head after I used it.
#science. Like, we know how that just washing it off doesn't cleanse it of its bacteria. And I get your point that we share bacteria. Mm-hmm. But toothbrush. But
so do you think that's any grosser than the fact that you leave it sitting in the shower and it's right next to the toilet? Now, let's talk about bacteria. It's our toilet and our shower are an inch apart. So you think it's grosser that I use it, then you just leave it sitting out right by the
it's not
toilet.
Soaking in the toilet, but it's similar, shared space. It's shared space, but we have a small house.
Diffusion of molecules.
Yeah, I don't know how that works. But yeah, I mean, I feel like this is a weird dynamic between us. And what's so
Is it a weirdness to be embraced though? Or is it a weirdness to to necessitate
No,
change
it's
in
what-
behavior.
I don't know.
For me, I think it's a weirdness to be embraced, and you should celebrate me using your toothbrush occasionally in the shower.
Okay, well, maybe we'll work on that.
All right. That's weird about us.
Yes. All right, let's have some book recs. Renee, let's start with you.
Okay, last week I went with a fiction book that I love, and this week I'm actually going to go with like a marriage book. And this will probably be my only like classical marriage book recommendation. But this was one, if you buy it now, the cover looks straight out of 1976. But it was one that was recommended to us 22 years ago. And
By Dr. French.
our pre-marriage counselor used strategies out of this, and it has probably been one of the more helpful marriage books that we've read. And it's by Dr. Scott Stanley, who ironically was at Denver University
For years.
For years. And it's called A Lasting Promise. And specifically in the book, what has been helpful for us is teaching us to deal with conflict. And I think if any of you are married, you know that conflict is a large part of marriage and a relationship. What do they say? If you don't have conflict, one of you is irrelevant.
Right.
So the more conflict, the more relevancy, maybe.
The more defined you are in your
Yes.
relationship.
But it gave us a really helpful strategy in the heat of conflict to work through it in a way that's productive and helpful and more rational, a tool to slow down. And it was funny when the counselor had Dave and I try out this technique.
It's called the speaker listener technique.
And if you've ever done counseling with Dave, you talk about this a lot.
Right.
But he had us give it a go and tell him what happened.
So speaker listener technique is basically it's just teaching you how to listen actively. So when your spouse is telling you, hey, this is, they're unloading some issue that maybe you disagree with, often you're not really listening, you're just sort of formulating your response. So this technique slows down that process so that you actually listen well, and it kind of guarantees that each partner can communicate clearly what it is they want and know that they've been heard. It's brilliant. So Dr. French says, so, hey, what are you guys experiencing right now that you want some conflict resolution on? And at that point, we were thinking about buying a new car. And I forget where we were on that, like who wanted to buy what, I forget. But all I do remember is that he's like, now the two of you do it. And you and I started doing the speaker listener technique. And then somehow this technique that's designed to create equal space and listening, somehow you clearly got the upper hand on me. And I think we were about to do whatever it is you wanted, but I didn't feel like I was being heard. And then he quit it right in the middle of it. And it's like, well, you get the idea. And I thought to myself, no, I don't get the idea. She's winning. She's better at this than me. I don't feel heard or understood. So anyway, but the tool itself is brilliant.
In all seriousness, I grew up in a family of arguers, and my dad's an attorney, and
there's 6 kids in your family.
Yeah, so arguing is a byproduct of that environment sometimes, skill at arguing. But it really showed me that I often don't listen. I just, exactly what Dave said, I'm formulating my response. So it was helpful in that it taught me how to actually listen to what the other person's saying before giving a retort. So all that to say, it's helpful, particularly if conflict is a real sticking point in your relationship right now. It's called A Lasting Promise by Scott Stanley. That's mine. What about you, honey?
Great. I too have a marriage book. It's called Secrets of Happily Married Men by Scott Salzman. And it's one that I read during our sabbatical. several years ago. It's not a Christian. The author is not a Christian. Doesn't come from a specifically Christian perspective, but he's long time marriage therapist. And what he did in this book that I really appreciated, he just took notes and listened to people who have had good marriages, and he began just to kind of group together themes of marriages that make it over the long haul. And then he wrote a book called The Secrets of Happily Married Men. One in particular that I refer to all the time, and I love it personally. It's been helpful for me, and it's been helpful to a lot of marriages who have, I've been the counselor and helping them. And that is understanding, especially for men, and this is about Secrets of Happily Married Men. So he's always thinking about the man's perspective in a marriage. But that whenever you come home after work, oftentimes the mentality is, I've come home to my castle. I've come home, I'm going to put my feet up, and I should just expect there to be this sort of immediate kind of relaxing environment. Men, and what he's observing is that men who have that expectation, they actually experience more stress and more frustration in the marriage than men who come home and their expectation is, I'm ready to dive in and to help. I'm ready to dive in and to engage.
Does he use, I think you've referred to it also as like a second job.
Yes.
Like viewing it as a second, like the same vigor and energy that you approach your job is how you come home and approach home life after work.
Yes. He says that men often, when they're at work, they're actually doing something they're good at. And, they're getting paid for it, so they get some kind of positive affirmation. And yet when they come home, the home environment in our culture is so classically domesticated. I'm doing air quotes. You can't see that at home. And oftentimes what's they think is required at home are actually skills and abilities and giftings, things that they don't view themselves as being good at. And so they come home and they actually don't feel like they're very useful at home. And so he said, no, when you go home, it's like the second shift. It is your mentality needs to be, no, you're going to work, but you're going to work at home. Using even what you're good at, and we talked about that earlier, using what you're good at, but expressing that in a way that's beneficial to your wife and your kids. And anyway, it helps to activate men and helps them to resist the passivity that becomes such a pattern especially for guys when they come home. And that passivity, of course, is becomes the seed of all kinds of dysfunction in marriages and in families. So this guy nails it. He's not a Christian, but he nails that issue in this book, which is why I'm recommending it to you. Secrets of Happily Married Men.
And who's the author again?
Scott Salzman.
Two Scotts.
Yeah. All right. Thanks so much for listening to a summer podcast. We'll see you next time.
Bye.
You